Three, two, one, and we're live. Joined today by Vincent Tessier, who comes to us from AdSquare. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming along on this bright and early Thursday morning, just before the Christmas break. So we're going to get into a lot of stuff around data, location data, sociodemographic data. But before we do, it'd be really great, I think, for our listeners, if you could just describe the AdSquare business and your role within that business and how you came to AdSquare.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. So AdSquare is a German company funded in 2012. So it's already been 6 years. We are around in the market, obviously funded in Europe. So actually the story how I joined AdSquare, I think it's pretty relevant, and it shows how we position as well, and basically our vision. So I actually did a thesis in 2011 around, I was just doing an MBA, right? And I was thinking, what can be the greatest topic, to study? And I basically thought mobile was, at a tipping point. And I actually studied how mobile will disrupt retail. So I was doing this MBA, I started blogging, and I actually saw a news that a company called AdSquare on TechCrunch, right, was raising their Series A. Mm-hmm. And at this time, I was actually working at Laplace Media, which is a French premium cooperation of premium publishers. Basically, think about Pangea, Ozo now in the UK, very similar, very early days, and I was head of mobile. And I was basically offering my in-app inventory to trading desk on a daily basis. Yep. And we had no audience offer. And I was really annoyed by that. I really want to build an audience-based product sold, to a PMP. So I was basically starting to look at the companies out there, and I was blogging at the same time. So I actually interviewed one of the co-founder and CEO of the company, Tom Laband, and we did this video, and then we started to discuss how we could work together. And I basically was so impressed by the vision of the founders, the technology they already had built, and how it solved an entire hole in the industry. Because again, on desktop at Laplace, we were doing a fair share of revenue through PMP. It was really on the rise. And trading desks were asking, hey, what can we do on mobile? We want actually to target business travelers, food lovers and everything. And I didn't have the technology. Mm-hmm. So that's basically how, after some discussions, we decided to work together. And I joined AdSquare in 2015 as VP Demand. So basically I was the first employee outside of Germany. And I opened the office in Paris. And then I moved to the UK to open the UK operations.
And what's the basis of the AdSquare business then?
Sure.
The proposition.
So as you understood, it's obviously mobile data, but we now operate on cookie as well, thanks to a partnership with TapAd, so we can bridge mobile ID to desktop and cookies to basically deliver multi-channel. And we are a real-time mobile-first data exchange. So if you need mobile data, you basically can come to us. We offer a transparent platform where you can model audiences. So I basically present it as an audience planning tool. And it's all transparent in the sense where you can actually see the name of the data provider. We provide all information to help basically traders to understand what they are buying. The vision of the company is basically, it was funded by so the three founders were working at Yop, which was and still operating, a mobile ad network. And they basically wanted, and again, I think it was 2012, right? And they basically thought that they wanted to open, the black box of data optimization and data targeting, and they wanted to decouple the data from the media. And I would say it's still a pretty strong vision and it's a pretty strong thing in the industry to do that. I don't know if you saw 2 weeks ago an article about Rocket Fuel.
So about what, sorry?
Rocket Fuel, right? So the ad network, 2 weeks ago, adexchanger.com published a story talking about how Rocket Fuel was over, performing. And the reason was basically they were making use of data they should not making use of. And I believe this is really a great illustration on data can do amazing things, and we all know it's all a data-driven economy now. But the data economy and the understanding of data and how can publishers or advertisers make use of it is obviously very still in the early days.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's a great example. And that's really in the DNA of the company to democratize and give the tools to buyers and sellers to basically build products. Think of us as a toolbox, right? To build products to enhance their targeting or their mobile campaigns as a whole. So going back to AdSquare and the products we have, so we have this data exchange, and we now have 800 million mobile IDs across the globe. We operate in the US, Europe, and we are about to launch APAC. And we have targeting products on one hand, and I will be happy to go through them at a later stage. And we also have an API to measure traffic in store and visit in store. That's really our two big pillars, targeting on one hand and footfall measurement on the other. And we believe that's really, really powerful, and that's really something you can do only if you have access to great quality and location data.
Okay, so let's talk about that for just a second then, that location data and how you are collecting and identifying, curating different location signals, because there are lots of different methodologies around the collection and the curation of location data, and everybody is seemingly either pro one methodology and con another, or vice versa. And so
Sure.
I'd like to understand a little better what the AdSquare methodology is and how you see the marketplace generally speaking and the different methodologies around that data collection.
Yeah. So there are obviously plenty of ways to collect location data. AdSquare, we basically started in the beginning of the company with exchanges. And we did that legally, or contractually legally. Mm-hmm. That means that we actually started the company. We thought, okay, we need data signals. Well, let's go to SSPs and exchanges because they have access to hundreds and hundreds of app developers, right? So if you manage to partner with them, you can have scale very quickly. And obviously, you need to clean the data. Whatever source of data you have access to, you need to clean it and then process it. Obviously.
So this would be bitstream data?
Yeah, absolutely. But again, we did that contractually legally. So we went to SSPs, we signed contracts. We were pretty much the only one in the world doing that. And we were happy to pay and go through all the legal things. And again, it was years ago. And when we were showing this to agencies and to partners and clients, we were basically already, we were pretty conscious that plenty of companies were collecting data without the user or the SSP knowing it, mm-hmm. basically masking data collection behind a media business. This is absolutely not what we've done because basically we've never done media, right? So we don't run campaigns, we don't have a DSP. And since already, I would say 18 to 24 months, we started to mix that with SDK data, so coming from app developers directly or aggregators, because we basically think there is no good or bad, data or methodology to collect data. It's just a matter of doing things properly and signing contract, obviously, and now with GDPR, having everything in place to make sure the data is obviously given with consent and explicit consent, and then mixing quality and scale. So for us, there is no, best methodology. It's just a mix of the two. And so the difference, to answer your question in terms of tech and building audiences, bitstream data, you have a lot of data points, a lot of users, but you have reasonable data point per user per day, right? Frequency. Mm-hmm. With SDK and data in the background, you have less unique users, but you have way more points of collection per day per user. So you can actually track user or collect data in a more frequent way. And we use both right now. And actually in some countries, we actually now use 100% of SDK data in the background, in the US, for instance. So that's basically our vision on this. You have other ways to collect data, Beacon, for instance, or cell towers. Beacon, we actually don't collect it ourselves, but we have data providers who actually have Beacon and have built audiences. So we basically offer their segments in the platform. But when it comes to footfall measurement, it's really bitstream and SDK data that we use.
Okay, great. And so if we move on to some of the other assets that AdSquare is productizing in the marketplace, and something that really interests me is your ability to enrich, I believe, the bid in a real-time basis. And that was something that always struck me as being quite an innovative approach to addressable audience insertion. So maybe you could speak a little bit about that.
Absolutely, yeah. This is one of our USP. That's why we are presenting ourselves as real-time data exchange. And in the space, we are pretty much the only one to activate audiences in this way. Pre-bid integration and activation has been, democratized by viewability vendors. And so when we started to build those audiences and aggregate those data providers, we thought, okay, how can we make sure the data is actually protected from data leakage? So we've never really sent, audiences in the form of an, Excel sheet to a media buyer, and then they send it to a publisher and applying this on an IO basis. The DNA of the company is to build APIs and to build a self-service platform for the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So we basically went to DSP years ago already. And trust me, it takes time, to build scale, to actually, be on the top of their roadmap and prioritization. But we've made it, and now we are integrated pre-bid with the major, DSPs of this world. So AppNexus, Adform, The Trade Desk, to mention a few, and also mobile, obviously mobile DSP like Fusio by S4M, Hawk by Tabmo, Splicky, MediaSmart. To mention a few. And this is very important because when you activate pre-bid, you actually don't give any data to the DSP, right? So you protect your data providers from data leakage. And that actually allows you, and actually it allows us to build different products. So going back to our different products, we have the targeting, category of products where you can activate audiences. So here, pre-bid, we enrich the mobile advertising IDs. Mm-hmm. But we actually thought, okay, what can we do more and to innovate a little bit more? So we've launched already years ago another pre-bid product called GeoContextual, where we enrich actually the location in real time. So we see a bid request, we see a location data point, so latitude, longitude, and we enrich it in real time to actually allow marketer to do mobile moment strategies. So you want to address users when they are close to an out-of-home poster, right, or close to a store, or in a condition where it's sunny, right, weather conditions. So that's all already doable, or only doable when you have pre-bid integration. And the last one is app contextual. So we launched it earlier this year, where we enriched the app bundle ID. And that's very interesting, and because that actually, as you know, audience targeting is great, but contextual targeting is obviously getting back to the market for a couple of reasons. Mm-hmm. And this is really interesting because it allows buyers to, in a couple of clicks, build a whitelist of travel apps, or selecting apps or building an inventory list of apps who have 5 stars in the stores. Or we actually also work with vendors who enrich the bundle ID for fraud protection. And so the rationale behind this is that you obviously, if you do PMPs and everything, you know the publishers. If you do open marketplace, you don't really know, what is declared in a bid request. So this product really do the qualification of the inventory on the demand side. And the vendors we work with, so basically Grapeshot, Admetrics, Priori Data, they basically qualify the inventory on their end with their semantic technology, scanning, the different app stores to understand really if this app bundle ID, which is the unique identifier of an app, right, is really a business app or really a travel app. So we really believe that's powerful. So that's the 3 products that pre-bid integration allows you to do.
You mentioned that contextual targeting, for a number of different reasons, is becoming increasingly it's back on the agenda, let's say, for most of the media planners and most of the activation teams, where audience had potentially begun to take a larger share of the pie over the past several years. And I think that's also true for location-based audience targeting and location-based media planning and media decisioning in general. What do you attribute that to, just in terms of the way in which, I mean, I've seen over the past maybe 2 or 3 years a much greater focus on physical location, on footfall measurement, reporting, etc., and on, to use your language, that moment-based marketing. Is that something that is being seen industry-wide as a trend, as a move back?
Yeah, definitely. So I personally joined AdSquare in 2015, and I started to go to market in those respective countries. And I was actually surprised that I was offering a way to measure mobile in a different way. So if you go back to, I don't know, a few years ago, as you know, mobile was mainly app install, like performance really oriented. Branding was there, is still there. Obviously, video is increasing that, but that was pretty much it. And as you know, mobile was behind for so long, in terms of investment. Now it's changing, right? And one of the reasons is obviously location, because with location, a retailer or even a brand or an automotive brand can actually measure their mobile investment, and that's pretty important. As you know, agency, if you don't measure, it doesn't exist, right? So you need a KPI. So location enables the industry and startups like us and other companies to have a new way to measure your media investment in terms of traffic in stores. And it's been years it was around. And again, when I started, the industry was not really yet there, at least in France. UK, it was already a little bit there, but France definitely not. And since 2 years, we really saw a massive catch-up, a massive enthusiasm across Europe, really, on what you can do now with location. And I believe now the industry is there. Retailers are asking the right questions, the agencies as well. So we are pretty happy about, obviously, this situation, because we've built those products and now the market is catching up. And that's actually why we wanted to push a little bit the innovation. And we launched 6 months ago a proper API who just do that. So we are actually now out of the beta phase with Google. So we are integrated with the offline conversion API of Google. We also have the Trade Desk and a couple of others, DSP, who can leverage this API. And to me, that's really great, because until now, you were doing a campaign, and post-campaign, you see the results. So you cannot really optimize or leverage, the great things you can do in programmatic. So now with this API, it's a real-time feed of visits that the trader can see in their DSP front end. And that actually build a new KPI, which is the place visit rate. Mm-hmm. And in real-time, traders, right after a few days of delivery, they can optimize their campaign, according to the creative, the publisher, the time of the day, because they can track and optimize against the visit in store. And that's very, very powerful. And to me, that's a game changer. And by the way, we are actually right now, post-GDPR, the only third-party, vendor in the DSP who allows this, who offer this. So that's really, really great.
Do you see that as the general direction of travel for AdSquare, to become more of a services layer, an API layer within the addressable media ecosystem? And you clearly have the data asset at the core of the business, but it seems like most of the innovation, most of the products that you're putting out into market today are focused on providing like an enablement layer, a facilitation layer for the ecosystem.
To be fair, since day one, this is what we do. We build, as I said earlier, we've built a toolbox, and we keep adding tools. We don't do the media activation, the media buying. We are integrated in DSPs. So it's really up to the traders, the agency, and the brands to make use of them, right? And we want to keep innovate and keep offering, great tools through APIs, self-service platform to enable, and enhance the mobile activation. And again, we also can do desktop. So that's something I really like, is that you can now run a campaign cross-device and measure traffic in stores. That's pretty innovative. And I will say not many advertisers are doing this yet. They think that, okay, I'm going to do a mobile campaign, and then thanks to the mobile advertising ID, some companies like AdSquare can actually measure this. But we can actually also do that based on cookie. Out-of-home is also another very interesting media, as you know very well. Right now, in a great movement of transformation with programmatic, but mobile data is already there, enhancing out-of-home, and we do great things on this. So for instance, we have travel and alcohol companies who actually provide us with their CRM data through LiveRamp. Mm-hmm. And then we help them to select, the posters, out-of-home posters. So it's really using mobile data to enhance your out-of-home media planning. And then we actually add the performance in terms of drive-to-store layer. And to me, that's really, really a great example of what mobile can do and what AdSquare can provide of value, right, to the industry.
Yeah, and I think those tactical examples of omni-channel media planning and execution are really great. And I think going back to the point that I was making earlier, just in terms of what seems to be a trend back towards, I guess more tangible characteristics of individual behavior, location being, one of those core core variables that people can get their heads around in terms of the physical movement of people, where they spend their time, the shops that they visit, the restaurants that they eat at. It seems to be over the past 18-24 months, as you said, that people are comparing those types of input, shall we say, in terms of data with what's coming from the third-party data ecosystem with online browsing and behaviors that are exhibited in a more digital fashion across desktop and mobile. And I feel like for a planner, for a pragmatic trader, there's a comparison between the value and the authenticity of those two different categories of data signal, and for the most part, at least at the moment, it seems that people are looking and favoring those location signals, those more tangible data sets.
Yeah, fair point. My view, my personal view, and actually the view of the company as well, because we've built this planning tool, is that you need to combine different data sets together.
Mm-hmm.
So, and to me, location, mobile ad networks, companies, or vendors should not be, pigeonholed in some kind of niche specialized product. And I believe this is obviously a natural thing to do in the industry, right? But I believe location data is great. You also have app behavioral or app ownership, right? So what apps you have installed on your phone, which is pretty much like behavior on desktop, but transmitted or translated to what you can do with apps on the mobile phone. Age and gender, we didn't mention this yet, but this is really a strong focus of us and what we do. Purchase data is also amazing, and for us, it's really one of the next big step in terms of the data landscape is seeing more e-commerce and retail company offering their data, to the market. By the way, the data is live in the platform, but we have just onboarded the Zalando data.
Okay.
So that's really, really great quality data sets. So you have age, gender, coming from the CRM, right, of Zalando, branded as Nugad, a company they purchased or bought a couple of years ago. So going back to your question, you need to combine different things. So taking behavioral, that like we do since years on desktop, intent data, purchase, and adding the location layer to build a bespoke, solid, at scale, segments. And that's what our platform is offering.
So your philosophy and what you're bringing to the market is less about creating a value spectrum around the different types of data, more about agnostically assessing each different data set within the context of a particular campaign and bringing those data sets together to bring about the best possible
Absolutely.
result.
Holistic audiences. Location only cannot answer, all the needs of a media plan. It's a great signal. It's kind of new to the market because you could not do that, on the desktop years. But you need to combine this with others for the sake of the quality of the segment and the scale as well. So yeah, combining all those data sets for us is the key.
You mentioned the increasing growth, the re-emergence of contextual-based targeting and media planning, and we said that that happened for a number of different reasons. One of those reasons clearly is the introduction of the General Data Protection Regulation, the new regulatory framework within which we all have to operate. I'm just wondering whether or not that had any kind of material impact on the AdSquare business and the way in which you were supplying or seeking supply for your data sets. Did it affect any of the relationships with bidstream data providers or publishers?
Obviously, it checked the market. So for us, so we are a German company, as you know. The law since years are way more restrictive. So the way we've built the company and all our contracts was already pretty solid, or pretty in details about what can we do with the data, how we do collect it. So obviously we had to do some changes, to have some conversation. We actually had to stop relationship with some vendors, and some data vendors. With the exchanges, basically one of our great partner is Mopub, and Mopub has done, from our perspective, a great thing is that they actually build their own consent management platform, and they're collecting themselves the consent, and we are listed part of the different vendors that can collect the data to build profiles, measure, etc. And if you go to their terms and policies, you can see that there is a long list of media, partners, but those guys can bid on the media, but they cannot build profiles out of that. We are one of the few companies who can access and make use of this data for targeting purposes. So that's just an example. But obviously, it was an important moment for the whole industry, and for us in particular. And actually, we saw the European landscape shake a little bit and change a little bit. Some companies, as you know very well, shut down their European offices. So for us, it's actually, at the end of the day, was a great opportunity, really. And it was needed because, again, data leakage was everywhere from a bitstream perspective or from other angle of the ecosystem. And now it really forced all companies, and in particular data companies, but really all companies, to do things in the right way, basically. And we really support this.
Yeah, I agree. In terms of perceived growth areas for AdSquare as a, let's say, a mobile-first business, you mentioned that you're looking to grow into Asia-Pacific. Are there any other areas of opportunity for growth that you guys are prioritizing?
Well, yeah, obviously in terms of regional expansion, APAC is the next big thing for us. We already opened an office in the US, in New York and Chicago 1 year ago. We've opened an office in Italy 6 months ago. So that's really something we want to strengthen. And then it's really focusing on product development. So we are currently in beta phase on audience insight feature in our platform, right? And we believe this is really, really essential, and we see a great traction on this. So you basically, as a publisher or an advertiser, you can actually ingest your first-party data, mobile advertising ID level, and we actually tell you, who they are and where they've been. So that's really, really powerful, and we see great use cases and great enthusiasm. And lookalike as well will be next year for us a big thing. So that's the kind of areas we are working on. Out of them as well, we already have a product, and we're going to enhance this to do great things and in an automated way with out of them. So that's really roughly the areas we are working on.
Yeah, it's always an interesting conundrum trying to manage product innovation, development, and then operational scalability across multiple markets. And for most SaaS businesses or DaaS businesses, trying to balance the engineering, product, and development resource against more commercial or client services resources.
It is, definitely, particularly when you are, a startup, a small company. So we are 50 people, but we are really doing a great job to prioritize where we put our resources. But I mean, the growth is there. I saw the figures from the IAB US actually recently. Mobile is now 64% of digital, right? So in terms of company, we actually saw an amazing growth the past years. So 2017 was 300% year-over-year growth. This year, it was basically a little bit more than 200%. So it's just how to manage this in terms of, as you mentioned, international expansion, existing market, and product development, which is for us as a technological company a core focus. So that's really where we're going.
And in terms of how that resource breaks down today then in your business, is it mostly focused towards development and engineering, or is it a fair balance between?
Well, definitely. I mean, we grew the sales team, obviously opening offices, but the IT team, product team has grown dramatically as well. So now I believe it's like 28 people, in the tech team out of 50. So that's decent share, and we are actually hiring. So anybody listening based in Berlin or actually in the commercial side based elsewhere, please reach out.
Great. And I was going to ask you, you mentioned the work that you've been doing in demographic audience segmentation. Do you want to speak a little bit more about that?
Absolutely, yeah. It has been a focus and it's still a focus since 18 months. So we actually really quickly understood that age and gender in the industry, on mobile specifically, was really poor. So we actually launched a curated taxonomy called AdSquare Data Alliance. And the goal is actually to collect and aggregate first-party data. So we have app developers of different sort, but obviously dating companies, dating apps have great age and gender at scale with great quality. So age and gender specifically, we have benchmarked and verified it against Nielsen DAR. So for instance, in the UK, we have 40 million device IDs that we have qualified with Nielsen Digital Ad Ratings. And for instance, the male one, we have 90% OTP, so on-target percentage. And we really think that raised the bar of the whole industry. If you look at the Nielsen benchmark, they are pretty average. It's the average of the industry, but it actually shows you where the industry is and how we can increase and raise the bar there. And this is really a great product that we have, and we are continuing to enhance with new first-party data onboarded.
And just to your point there about raising the bar and something that you mentioned earlier around the GDPR in terms of more entities within the ecosystem, acting in the right way. Do you think that the direction of travel across a third-party data ecosystem in general is towards quality? And if so, how do you see that manifesting?
Definitely. I mean, it's been already, I don't know, let's say 1-2 years that the industry in general is moving towards quality. And obviously, talking about location or actually age and gender, you have now a shortage of good quality data. And obviously, the industry is now more educated. So if you offer a business traveler, right, you need to answer all the right questions about how it was modeled, the methodology was, verified, and what's the solidity of the segment. So this is all the questions now that, as a data, company, you need to work on very, very hard. Location included, obviously, the quality of the location. So definitely, the industry is going towards more quality. Yes.
And as a build on that, and to reference one of the points that you made earlier around developing alliances, second-party data partnership is something that we speak about quite frequently on this podcast. And I'm a big advocate. I've always been a big advocate of finding tactical opportunities for businesses to come together to share mutually beneficial data sets and to decouple some of their data assets to make that available for the open market.
Yeah.
Are you an advocate of the second-party data ecosystem? How do you see that developing over the next several months?
Well, we are. And just to prove that, already 2 years ago, we launched a data PMP feature in the platform. And let me explain. That's nothing to do with the deal ID when you transact, media with a publisher. A data PMP is basically just a buyer and a vendor doing a transaction, and this is private. So in our platform, a premium publisher or any data provider can upload a specific custom set of data, negotiate a price, and make it available, on the AdSquare account of a specific buyer for a specific brand and advertiser. And then it's pushed to the DSP and then, activated. And for us, this is key to enable basically what you mentioned being second-party data deals across the ecosystem. And we see more and more adoption of this.
So you have your own second-party data marketplace essentially built within the tool?
Absolutely, yes. So you have the open marketplace. So basically, this is the open taxonomy that any buyer can see in the platform. And you have the private marketplace piece that publishers and buyers can take advantage of.
Great. Is there anything else you want to talk about today? I mean, you are the first guest that I've had on the podcast that brought notes and prepared for the session, so I appreciate that very much. I wanted to make sure I reference that to let everybody know. AdSquare comes prepared. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, really. I mean, we've done some events, so maybe just mention this. We've done Audience in Motion, which is our the event we organize along with other partners. We've done this one this year in New York, Chicago. Next year, we're going to do more, for instance, in Milan in Q2. So yeah, you can have a look on the website. You can see great interviews from our different partners. And really, any companies who is interested, just reach out, have a look at the platform, which I believe brings great value to the ecosystem.
Great. I'll make sure to add links to all of that when I do my write-up. But Vincent, thank you very much for coming in. Have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy
Merry
New
Christmas
Year.
as well. Thank you very much, Miles.
Thank you.